I'd like to ask, for those of you that are getting out of class, if you hear this, if you have 10 minutes in between class, just come on over here and listen to what the speakers have to say. Like Spencer said, I'm a student here. I represent actually all of you, the students, and the community at the Board of Trustees, which is part of administration. And we're also going to have a professor, administrators, and other staff, classified staff, that's going to be talking about budget cuts and how they affect all of us here at Merced College, in the community of Merced, across the state. So what I want to talk about is basically letting you know how this affects everyone, one way or another. So once again, if you're listening to this, if you can get a little bit closer, we'd appreciate that. Let's see. If you can, by show of hands, you don't have to raise your hand. If you could, that'd be great. I'd like to know how many of you are here because your goal is to one day transfer to a CSU or a UC. Okay, keep your hands up. Yeah. How many of you guys this year were signed up for a class or were hoping to take a class so that you could transfer and your class was canceled? So keep your hands up, those two groups. How many of you guys get financial aid or receive aid from Cal Grants? More hands, right? How many of you guys don't get financial aid and you have to pay for your own fees? $26 a unit out of your own pocket. How many of you guys are student athletes? You play sports for the school. How many of you receive services from Disabled Student Services or EOPS? How many of you are veterans or know someone who will be coming back in the next year or two and maybe coming back to college after finishing their service? How many of you guys have a brother or a sister or a nephew or a niece that is graduating high school this year or in the next few years? That's probably most of us, right? So California community colleges are the largest system of public education in the world, serving 2.9 million students every year, and over 25% of students in the country are served by California community colleges. In addition, there are currently over 2.2 million Californians who are not working because they were laid off or for other reasons, and many of them are coming back to college. Like I mentioned, many veterans are also coming back, and one of their options is to come back to school. So there are 3 levels, or maybe 4 levels, that are being affected by budget cuts. UCs, CSUs, community colleges, and K through 12. And that's just education. There are other public sectors, public services that are also being affected. And although I won't be talking about those, I just want to let you know that everyone is being affected by this. So let's see, let's start with the UC system. UC tuition is going up 32% from this year to next year. About 7 years ago, tuition was about $4,000. By 2008-2009, fees were $7,100 approximately. This year, they're about $9,400, and next year, they'll be about $10,300. At that rate, in a few years, the cost of the UC will be similar to a private university. Some of the complaints that UC students have is that classes are already too large. I'm sure you have heard that sometimes you might be in a class with 200, 300, 400 students in a lecture. With these budget cuts, those classes, the size of those classes is increasing. Also, teacher assistants and discussion classes are being cut. So at a UC, usually you'd have a large lecture and a smaller discussion class. Those classes are being cut. In addition, library hours are being reduced, and libraries may not be open on the weekends anymore. Also, written assignments are being replaced by multiple choice exams. And many UC students feel that they are fighting the privatization of the UC system. Or in other words, they feel the system is being run like a business as opposed to a public school. At the CSU level, tuition has gone up 182% since 2002. Back then, they paid $1,572 per year. They are currently paying $4,026. At CSU Stanislaus alone, this year, 140 classes were cut. Over 60 professors and lecturers were fired or laid off. Starting next fall, even tenured professors can will be receiving or may be receiving layoff notices. Programs such as philosophy and English, who are right now are separate programs, are being merged into one. And whole programs may be cut. The first one to go is actually the Ethnic Studies Department at CSU Stanislaus. In addition, CSUs across the state are cutting acceptance, students who are being accepted for next year by 40,000. So 40,000 less students who are hoping to transfer or be accepted out of high school are not going to be able to go to a CSU anymore. Merced College had over 120 classes cut last semester. In November, some of our staff was laid off. We have even had professors be laid off. With the news that are coming from Sacramento, things don't seem to, they don't look to get any better. And finally, last but not least, the K-12 system is being affected just as much. March is the month when pink slips can be handed out to teachers and staff. We could see a great loss if the layoffs are approved. So going back to the questions where I asked all of you to raise your hand. So one of the things that I mentioned was Cal Grants. There's a current proposed elimination of the competitive Cal Grant program, and this could hurt the neediest community college students at a time when California citizens are deeply concerned with college affordability. This program, the competitive Cal Grant program, provides 44,000 students across the state with grants of $1,551 for textbooks, transportation, and supplies. These students are generally students whose income averages less than $14,000 a year, and they are ineligible for the state's entitlement program because they worked between high school and college. In addition, last year it was proposed that fees per unit could have been as high as $57 per unit, up from the $26 that we pay right now. This year it's being proposed that the fees could be $40 for next year. This affects those of us, or those of you, or all of us that don't qualify for financial aid and have to pay for our own units. So $40 per unit next semester is over over a 50% increase over what we pay now. In addition, programs that provide basic services have lost millions of dollars in funding. Programs like EOPS, CARE, DSPS, Matriculation, CalWorks, and Basic Skills. Staff has been laid off, and in result, students have lost the help from these employees. The proposed cuts right now of over $10 million affect part-time faculty compensation and EOPS. These cuts are basically devastating. Another item that I mentioned was athletic programs. California's legislature is looking at athletic programs, including sports teams and PE, and saying, hey, these programs don't really help students transfer to universities. These programs don't help students get a job. Legislators aren't thinking about the many students that are student athletes and receive scholarships to go to school because they play a sport. Last month, at Sierra Community College, 6 athletic teams were on the chopping block. During their board meeting, all 6 teams made commitments to self-fund for next year. That means that they will continue to exist, the teams will continue to exist as long as they pay for themselves. Could you imagine that happening at Merced College? It could. Furthermore, it is estimated that California's community colleges currently serve 24,000 veterans plus 8,000 active duty personnel. The California Post-Secondary Education Commission estimates that an additional 34,000 veterans and active duty personnel will seek access to California community colleges next year, at a time when funding is at its lowest. This means less spots will be open for them when they try to return. 2010 will see California's biggest graduating class in over 40 years, with over 380,000 graduates emerging from our high schools this year. This graduating class is being called Tidal Wave 2, with good reason. Many of these students will be turned away from UCs and CSUs. And in addition, they may be turned away from community colleges. The community college has had its doors open to just about anyone that needs to take classes, whether they be